One thing that comes to mind is what we mean when we say devotee. Because Srila Gurudev, he liked to quote one of Srila Guru Maharaj's godbrothers saying, whether someone is 1% a devotee, 5%, 25%, 50%, 75%, 99%, 100%, that has to be factored in. And the scriptural support for that is we have the headings, Karma Misra Bhakti, Jnana Misra Bhakti, Jnana Shunya Bhakti. Right? So Misra means mixture. So we hear there's a type of Karma Misra Bhakti, there's devotion but some karma mixed in. Jnana Misra Bhakti, there's devotion but some jnana mixed in. And Guru Maharaj would tell us, or he reminds us repeatedly, he says, there's gradation in everywhere and everything. And just to underscore that point, he'd say, no two things are identical. They're even identical twins, right? In the world, some people cannot tell the difference, but the mother usually can, hopefully. Right? She knows, oh, this one, they even know they're a little bit physically different, but they know by nature. I remember being on an airplane sitting next to a lady, and she had these two little girls who were identical twins with her. And she said one is like a really girly girl. She really cares about what she looks like, how she dresses, everything. And the other one, who is identical to her, could care less about what she, even though they're wearing matching clothes, everything looks the same. She's saying, this one really cares, that one doesn't. She knows that. So there's gradation everywhere and in everything. So this all-important matter is, what is a devotee? Who is a devotee? What is devotion? Real devotion. And we could make a case that Krishna consciousness, beginning, middle, and end, is a study of devotion. So the healthy perspective for the aspiring devotee and practitioner is to, in Gurudev's words, my religion is finding fault with myself, to apply some very intense scrutiny of one's own motives, and position, whereas giving the benefit of the doubt to others. Which means we'll think, sometimes Saraswati Thakur would even express that all others are serving Krishna. We hear this from the great devotees. The Mahabhagavata is saying, all are serving Krishna, only I am not. There's that type of vision. And from a Mahabhagavata, it is understandable. They're not distinguishing. Therefore, we're told that the position of Guru is enacted from Madhyam Adhikar, means even a Mahabhagavata must descend to the Madhyam, the middle position, where one distinguishes, makes some distinction between the 1%, 5%, 25, 50, etc. What is tacitly understood from this as well, and we're warned by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, implied, is that when you start analyzing, you run the risk of committing offense. I may have mentioned recently when Vishwanath Chakrabarti Thakur, he's given some comparative analysis between Devaki and Yashoda, and in the Brahma Vimohan Leela. So he's observing the good fortune of those as Krishna expands into all the identical cowherd boys and calves, how Chakravarti Thakur is celebrating the good fortune of those mothers who had Krishna as their son for a year. As we know in the story, that Krishna identically taking on their forms, it's unknown to the mothers. They just know internally that for some inexplicable reason, the love they only normally feel for Krishna, everyone loves their child the most, but they know privately in their hearts that actually they love Krishna more. But for this 1 year, they're thinking, now that kind of love I used to only have for Krishna, I'm feeling towards my own child. And they're just thinking this is some peculiar thing. They are jnana shunya bhaktas. So they're not analyzing it, so they're just thinking, interesting, peculiar. That love I only felt for Krishna, now I feel for my own child. For a year. Why? Because Krishna took the form of their child. Those calves, when their mothers come, they're also thinking, they're conscious being, these are cows in Krishna Lila. They're exalted devotees. And they're thinking, that love I felt for my own calf, that I felt for Krishna, now I'm feeling for my own calf. How peculiar that is. So it takes someone of the stature of Vishwanath Chakrabarti, he makes this analysis and says, it's interesting that if we compare Devaki and Yashoda, we see that because Krishna left the prison cell almost immediately, some will say Devaki never had the opportunity to breastfeed Krishna. Some may say once that like she breastfed Krishna and then Krishna was carried away to Gokula. But whereas Yashoda was always breastfeeding Krishna. What is the famous sloka in the Bhagavatam? One is Aho Bhagyam Nanda Gopa Brajokasham Paramanandam but a comparison made to the comparative fortune of Nanda and Yashoda. Yashoda more fortunate than Nanda Kim Akarod Brahmam Shreya Eva Mahodayam Yashoda Va Mahabhaga Papo Yasya Stanam Hari. Why is Yashoda, through analysis, understood to be more fortunate? We say Nanda Yashoda, mother, father. Why? She's breastfeeding Krishna. That particular seva is coming from her. So that point is made. Chakrabarti Thakur is saying, so we can understand from this sort of analysis perspective the most exalted position of Yashoda, but she is so kind and thoughtful of the position of the other devotee, Devaki, that she's promoting Krishna, allowing Krishna to be known as Devaki Nandan. So one meaning of Yashoda, Yasha means fame. Yashoda, she gives fame to others. So she gave the fame that you'll be known as Krishna's mother also. Then someone like Saraswati Thakur will quote a scripture saying, but another name of Yashoda is Devaki. So when you say Devaki Nandan, it also means Yashoda Nandan. But anyway, Chakrabarti Thakur will say, so Yashoda is always breastfeeding Krishna. These mothers got to breastfeed Krishna in the form of their children for a year, as did the mother of the calves. But then when he realizes this analysis is it's developing going forward, he says, we can't say any more about this. I said a little bit about the comparative position of Yashoda and Devaki, and I'm stopping now. And it's impossible for me to say any more about it. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur warns that this type of analysis, analyzing, what Guru Maharaj sometimes referred to as tatastha vichar, impartial analysis, to determine higher, lower, superior, inferior, desirable, undesirable, favorable, unfavorable. you have to be careful. Right? What is it that compels us to engage in this analysis? Curiosity or envy? In the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the dharmak prochita kaita botra paramo nirmat saranam satam. This Paramahansa Sangita, the qualification to enter into an understanding of the Bhagavatam, the qualification to enter into an understanding of Krishna consciousness, the qualification to understand the devotee is nirmatsarja, to not be envious of them. What does that mean? I mean, it's a negative prescription or prohibition, but it has a positive implication. Negative, not to be envious. What is envy? Defined in this context is to not allow someone to be seen in their rightful position. To not recognize that. And to be more specific, to not recognize devotion, to not recognize devotional tendency. Neho bikramanasho pratyavayo navidyate swapam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahatobayat. A little bit of this is extraordinary and eternally beneficial. So these other aspects of a person in terms of flaws, perceived defects, whether they be character flaws or improper behavior, etc., they're not eternal characteristics. They might temporarily show something and vanish, whereas the devotional tendency is of lasting, permanent, and eternal nature. Srila Gurudev, when he was giving some of his final words, said that everyone has some fault, something. And whether it is big or small, that is not the question. And he said that with the same cadence of the famous Shakespearean, to be or not to be, that is the question. So Gurudev said, big or small, that is not the question. He said, but what must be recognized is their devotional tendency, serving tendency. And he said that must be recognized and respected. So that is the vision of the devotees. Guru Maharaj says our only hope of connecting with the upper world, what to speak of the highest aspect of the upper world, Goloka Vrindavan. What is it known as? The land of love. Love conceals all deficiencies. Right? And speaking of Shakespeare, in The Merchant of Venice, there's this famous talk given by Portia that begins with the line, the quality of mercy is not strained, it rains like the rains out like the gentle rain from heaven. Something like that. I'm paraphrasing. But there it's also mentioned, but for mercy, we have no hope of redemption, if we want to use that word. So, you see in the Bhagavad, we're looking repeatedly, how we will view things. We say Shastra Chakshu, through the eyes of Scripture, through the eyes of the devotees. So what do we hear from the Scripture? If we hear these statements, if we're paying attention to the statements, the Braja Gopis and others, we'll hear things, just like I said in that statement, where the devotees are running. What did Nanda do? Nanda Kim Akarod Brahma. What did Nanda do that he's got Krishna crawling in his courtyard? What did Yashoda do that the Supreme Lord is sitting on her lap sucking her breast? That's a question from a devotee. Others will say, Aho bakiyam stanakalakutam jigam sayapayayadapya sadvi lebhegatim datri uchitam tatonyam kamba dayalum sharanam brajema. saying, Putana, she approached Krishna with murderous intentions, and he turned it into something else. Right? Once, Srila Prabhupada Swami Maharaj mentioned about some particular disciple of Saraswati Thakur. He's speaking a little harshly. He said, he was serving our Guru Maharaj like Putana. He said, but like Putana, Krishna's taking the seva. So he said, Saraswati Thakur was taking the seva, and that person became liberated. Then you think, well, what is Krishna consciousness? But those devotees, they're saying, but let's listen to everything they're saying. They're saying, well, if Putana, who approached Krishna with murderous intentions, he ignored that and accepted the motherly gesture, then what to speak of someone who, the first thing Chakrabarti Thakur says is neutral. Then even neutral is a higher position than that. If that person got an exalted position, then someone even in a neutral, Shanta-like position, what will they get? Then what to speak of someone has a mood of servitorship, dasya. Then they're saying, sakyam brijahu krita punya punya. Then what to speak of someone's like friendly with Krishna, has, what is the word? I can't remember, but anyway, friendly. Love and affection. Then they're saying, then familial, conjugal, svakya, parakya, etc. It's moving in that way. In one place, Srila Saraswati Thakur said, it is only that I am honeycombed with thousands of defects that I take the task of finding fault with Vaishnavas. And then he gave an example of his, divine vision. He said, sometimes if someone hears someone is no longer taking the name of Krishna, they might be critical. Saraswati Thakur said, I'm thinking, so much seva came to them by the Krishna Nam that they had been taking. Now so much seva has come to them, they're not taking Krishna Nam. So this type, again, Maha Bhagavad adjustment, come down to the middle position and distinguish something. But then again, very carefully, very cautiously, like Srila Guru Maharaj will say, it's possible that if someone really thinks something is wrong, objectionable, scandalous, whatever you want to say, that they could approach a higher authority and say, in this situation, I don't know what to think. I'm bringing this to your attention. Please advise me. That's possible. But we should be very cautious of these things. And he gave his own life as an example where there was one devotee in Gaudiya Math who some devotees felt was really abusing his position and finances and many things. But they were afraid to approach Saraswati Thakur because he is rendering so much service to him and to the mission. But then they thought, but Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he's so pure, he's not a fault finder by nature, he has the disinterested nature. If we can convince him to present this to Saraswati Thakur, that'll be good for us. If he represents the position, then Saraswati Thakur will take it seriously. So Srila Guru Maharaj approached Saraswati Thakur and presented their case to him. And Guru Maharaj said Saraswati Thakur was visibly disappointed with him and said, I could expect this from the others, but from you, I can't tolerate it. And I couldn't think that you would approach me with something like this. Others maybe, but not you. So he expressed some disappointment, and Guru Maharaj was very chagrined, and this was very painful for him. And he withdrew that immediately and mentioned various things that Saraswati Thakur said. One of which was, because something in terms of monetary exchange and things like that, he said, I am prepared to throw money in the Ganga if it's necessary for the service of Mahaprabhu. And he gave some other considerations, but left it. The Guru Maharaj left it, he left it. Then 3 months later, they're in South India, and they're touring the Mat, and there's some publishing going on and different things. And there's a Bhagavatam that's open. And Saraswati Thakur walks up to the Bhagavatam and sees which sloka it's open to. And he tells Guru Maharaj, here's your answer. Because it was 3 months later, Guru Maharaj was thinking like, what question did I ask? And then he thought, oh, Prabhupada, Saraswati Thakur, he's still thinking about that all this time. And he's going, here's your answer. And the sloka given there is this swapada moolam bhajata priyasya, which, and then just to render it roughly, saying, if someone has exclusively dedicated their life to the service of the lotus feet of Guru and Gauranga, Radha Govinda, that if they make some mistake, some character flaw, behavioral problem, whatever it might be, there is no punishment for that. There's no prayaschitta, no atonement. Why? First of all, they've dedicated themselves wholesale to the service of Guru and Gauranga. And secondly, there's nothing more purifying than that seva. So to take them from that seva and say, well, they'll have to do this as a penance, or they'll have to do this as an atonement, you're sending them to something that's less purifying than what they're already doing. So similarly, in that apichet suracharo bhajate mam ananyabhak slok in Bhagavad Gita, where the Mahajans sing Bhaktivinoda Thakur, taking Krishna Nam, walking in the subtle world, invite him in their Gita class assembly to explain that what is an Ananya Bhakta? What qualifies for this? That's the point. Because we'll say, all right, an Ananya Bhakta, then it will be ignored, dismissed. But what is an Ananya Bhakta? And so they say, oh, here's one, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, let's invite him. And he'll explain. And that's when he explains the next verse saying, Kipram bhavati dharmatma shashvat shantim negacchati konteya prati janihi name bhakta pranasyati. Where it says dharmatma is glossing this, that saying, if the qualification of an Ananya Bhakta means exclusive devotee, is that he is sarvadharmam parityajya mamekam sharanam braja. He's given up everything and surrendered to Krishna. He's an exclusive devotee to the lotus feet of Guru and Gauranga. Then, if he shows something untoward, unholy, whatever it might be, if you, as Gurudev said, big or small, that is not the question. If you can look to his servitor identity, to the Swarup aspect, the servitor aspect, and say, still, sadhureva samantavya, still he's saintly because of his dedication and serving spirit and tendency, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, then you'll be benefited. So rather than tear them down or think of them offensively, or from an envious point of view, think that the mundane aspect has canceled the spiritual, if you can look beyond that and see their spiritual quality, Bhaktivinoda Thakur is saying, you'll make progress. You'll be rightly situated. So, Gurudev saying, my fault is I believe everyone. And I would say, no, Maharaj, that is your good quality. He's looking at the servitor aspect, the servitor identity, and the serving tendency, and amplifying and magnifying that, and seeing everything else as superficial and insubstantial, not the inverse, not thinking, this is what they're really like, and this devotional part is superficial and shallow and not permanent. Just the opposite. No, the other thing is like Bhaktivinoda Thakur saying in Jaiva Dharma, talking about acquired nature and permanent nature, ice and water. So no doubt when ice is in the ice stage, it's hard. But that's a temporary quality that it's acquired. It's not its real nature. Its real nature is to be liquid and flow. So we hear Raghunath Bhatta Goswami. We don't hear a lot about him, but one of the things we hear about him is that he would never listen to any criticism of a Vaishnava. And we could say here that the implication being that maybe there was some cause for criticism. It didn't say he dismissed all criticism as being illegitimate. It's saying he didn't want to hear that. Why? Because it will pollute his consciousness when considering that person. And if that person has become dear to Guru and Gauranga, then we run the risk of committing offense. And if we're thinking offensively of those who are dear to the lotus feet of Guru and Gauranga, that's going to be harmful for us. So, at all costs, we want to avoid committing Vaishnava aparadh. And if we can look beyond those superficial aspects, we'll be able to live in a higher plane happily, instead of the heart being like a cancer. Envy of devotees, Vaishnava aparadh, fault finding is like a cancer. We're told also it leads to uprooting the devotional creeper. So at all costs we have to avoid that. And when we say 5%, 25%, we'll have to say, well, I don't know. Am I the person who can make that valuation? That this person is 50%, 75%? I think he's around the high 80s. No, so then we'll look to the higher Vaishnavas. And we've seen in the case of Srila Gurudev, sometimes one servitor is not appreciating the spiritual qualities of another, to put it mildly. Right? But then you see, but Gurudev has a good relationship with both. Both of them love him, he loves both of them. So then the disciple will think, I want to match the sentiments of my Guru. If he thinks this person is all right and he's giving them love and affection and recognition, how can I not? Better I adjust myself. But that said, once that happens, maybe more than once. But in my case, once it happened where I thought some particular person, that they needed to be quarantined. Let's use that word. But Gurudev and Avadut Maharaj, they thought differently than me. And I thought, well, if they're both thinking, and I thought, what's wrong with me? I need to readjust myself. So this one particular day, I met with this person and readjusted myself. And I was very proud that I did this too. And so when Gurudev came up the stairs back and we're sitting talking, I said, oh, Maharaj, I have changed my opinion. Now I am of the same opinion as Your Divine Grace and Sripad Avadut Maharaj. I've changed my opinion. And Gurudev said, I can never say that. And I went, what? And he said, about this, always fault finding, and then he started saying all these things. Poisoning, and that's when he said, my religion is finding fault with myself. So then I was just bewildered. But I thought, he's the higher Vaishnava. If he's making some determination, then we're all right. In either direction, that is our position. But we know, interestingly, in the case of Saraswati Thakur, some servitor did something objectionable, and some time went by, and they again met with Saraswati Thakur, and the devotees approached him and said, so-and-so Prabhu, he wants to come back in the association of the devotees again, and is begging forgiveness for his offenses. And Guru Maharaj said, Saraswati Thakur said, I cannot accept him, but you shall all accept him. And then Guru Maharaj said they were perplexed because they thought, well, whatever your position is, we want to have the same position as you. And he said, no, I cannot accept him, but you shall. He said, and he mentioned Kala Krishna Das, Mahaprabhu ousted him from his direct association, but he got shelter under the auspices of Nityananda Prabhu and the other devotees. So that was Saraswati Thakur's example. And I know some cases too where Guru Maharaj told us, I cannot accept this person right now, but you engage them. So there are many possibilities, but at all costs, we want to avoid thinking offensively about Vaishnavas of the least adhikar, what to speak of, to the highest position. Because in the case of the highest position, that's suicidal. But Srila Guru Maharaj, he would remind us, he said, even a new person we should show respect to. He said, because first of all, now they're connected to what we say is the highest thing, right? And the most wonderful thing, and the most divine thing. Now they're connected to it. They're appreciating it. They have their connection. And he added, he said, God willing, I may be going slowly, and they're going very rapidly. So it's not inconceivable that they could surpass me, and I would be in a position in the future to receive grace from them. Of course, hearing such an explanation, we'll understand this is the vision of a Mahabhagavata. So, who's the most exalted? He's saying, even a new person, we should show respect to. That's Guru Maharaj's position. And just to add to that, his repeatedly saying, I am a student, Not a finished professor knowing anything and everything. He said a student. And that's the best position to be in as a student, forever a student. He said, why? Because a student can make mistakes. A student can learn more. It's a progressive position. Whereas when you're cornered in the, finished professor, knowing anything and everything, never makes a mistake, everything they say, do, etc., is perfect. He said that is a static position. You can only go down from there, whereas the student can make progress. And if we recognize that despite someone's apparent flaws, that they do have some serving tendency, spirit of devotion, dedication, then it'll be better for us to think, if I could get a little bit of that from them, what they've got, the good thing they've got, my position will improve. So let me think of them in such a way and deal with them in such a way to appreciate their dedicating tendency, and maybe some grace will come to me from that. And once I asked Guru Maharaj, having heard his explanation of apichet suracharo, and I said, Maharaj, I heard that some God brothers objected to this explanation. And Guru Maharaj went, he said, who are these God brothers? And I went, I don't know. I said, you said. And then he laughed and he said, Judge of our Maharaj. And he said his point was, he was afraid that this will be abused. That everyone go, they'll use this explanation to justify misbehavior. But then we come back to the central point also about who is an Anyabhak, an exclusive devotee. An actual exclusive devotee will never apply this to themselves. They'll apply it to others, but they won't apply it to themselves, because an aspect of being an exclusive devotee, pure devotee, is, in Guru Maharaj's words, they will never think that they have achieved anartha nivritti, which we can take in two ways. One is freedom from unwanted behavior or even sinful activities, or the other side of that, anartha, misconception. So they will never think that they've reached that stage. So they're not going to apply this to themselves. They'll only apply it to others. Back to Gurudev's saying, my religion is finding fault with myself. He didn't say, my religion is finding loopholes within Krishna consciousness to justify misbehavior. He didn't say that was his religion. Right? That's not dharmak prochita kaitavo traparamo nirmatsaranam sadam. My religion finding fault with myself, applying that type of intense scrutiny, self-analysis to myself, and being generous in viewing others, giving them the benefit of the doubt. Hare Krishna. Jai.